Welcome. Special coverage tonight. Joe Biden's State of the Union address. Gonna watch, react in real time, fact check in real time. Mr. Producer Josh is going to be joining us as soon as he gets free. I think he'll be joining us a little bit into the State of the Union tonight. So welcome, everyone. If this is the first time you've been to one of these streams, we like to have a good time, be a little lighthearted about it. Obviously, we are witnessing a man presiding over the attempted destruction of the Republic. So there's seriousness to it, but with these State of the Union addresses, we like to try and keep it a little bit lighter if we can. To start off with that, a funny scene, you can kind of see that on the right side of the screen. We're going to be using the C-SPAN stream tonight because that is generally friendlier to use for reaction type videos like this. A little bit of developments in Washington, D.C. tonight. There are some Palestinian protesters who are blocking the route in between the White House and the Capitol building, which is interesting because one of the narratives going into this is going to be unity among the Democrat Party. They want to paint the picture that the Democrat Party, the Democrat coalition is unified, whereas the Republican coalition is fragmented because Nikki Haley, generally receiving 20-ish some percent of the votes with a few exceptions. Most of her voters, Democrats. They're trying to build up that narrative. It is very funny that Joe Biden will likely be a little late tonight because Palestinian protesters, his constituents, his voter base, are blocking or attempting to block at the very least the path from the White House to the Capitol building. So we will keep an eye on that as we get closer to see if that responds. It'll be interesting to see whether they're allowed to protest like the left, like Antifa, like these Palestinian protesters, like the George Floyd protesters, whether they're allowed to have a mostly peaceful protest or whether they are shooed out of the way. We'll see. We will see. So we're getting some video on the right showing leadership, obviously showing the vice president, Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, other members of the GOP and Democrat leadership walking into the chambers. This is the State of the Union address, obviously. Little fun fact, State of the Union does not need to be delivered in person. For the early part of American history, the State of the Union was delivered in written form to Congress. It wasn't a State of the Union address to the American people. It was a State of the Union address to Congress. The president would write it down and deliver it to Congress. Obviously, the advent of the radio and the television made it more conducive to deliver that speech live, made it more meaningful to deliver that speech live. So nowadays it is delivered live. But it's important to remember that because in recent years, when you saw Democrats protest going to the State of the Union when Trump was president, people say, "Oh, you have to be there." No, they technically don't. They can read the transcript. They don't even have to read. They don't have to be there. So this year, we're seeing some Republicans protesting and not going to the State of the Union address for similar reasons: Joe Biden's border crisis, the terrible policies, and the like. With the Republicans obviously in control of the House of Representatives, very slim control, you're going to see a little bit bigger percentage in the crowd of Republicans than we have in some years past, where Democrats controlled the House and the Senate. So it is going to be a much more evenly divided crowd today. And you're going to notice that there's going to be one side standing up and cheering for everything, and another side just basically sitting on their hands, refusing to cheer. We've heard from the Republican leadership that they do not want their party to jeer. They don't want any you lie kind of moments, as deserved as they may be. Republicans don't want that to be the narrative that Joe Biden was disrespected. So we'll see. We'll see whether the Republican leadership has control over their caucus to the point where they can make that kind of stand down order stick, or whether some Republicans, recognizing that there's really nothing the leadership can do to them, whether some Republicans kind of defy that decorum command and stand up, get a little raucous. In recent years, obviously, when you have one party in control of Congress, they have a sizable majority, they can punish members of their party who step out of line, right? So when Republicans used to step out of line, they could be punished, they could be censured, they could be kicked off their committee assignments, they could even, as we saw recently, be removed from Congress. But the majority in the House of Representatives is so narrow at the moment, with Republicans just having a couple of seats, with just a couple of seats, there really isn't any room for Republicans to punish anyone for going against Speaker Johnson. So we'll see. We'll see. It's the Speaker of the House position is less powerful than probably it's ever been before, because it only takes a couple of Republicans to side with Democrats, and you can quite literally bypass the Speaker of the House on votes. Getting through some of these comments. Cannonball says, good evening, Max. Good evening, Cannonball. Good evening, everyone. Mandy says, are you guys still thinking about putting a billboard down here in Colorado? Also, Fox is reporting he might get ruckus from the Democrats as well. We are looking at that. We have the ability to buy digital billboard space. So we are considering doing that. Probably not anything really big and flashy, but see if we can get some billboards down there. Fox reporting, yeah, he might, because as I said when we first came on, Democrats are actually protesting in the streets of Washington, D.C. and attempting to block the motorcade. These are Democrat protesters protesting the Biden administration's policy towards Israel and towards Palestine. They're going to, as I said before, they're going to attempt to create a narrative that Joe Biden is, the Democrats are united, but Democrats are far more divided now than Republicans are. Far, far, far more divided, as we see some different legislators, vice president entering the halls of Congress right now on the right. We had elections in Michigan and Minnesota where sizable parts of the Democrat voting base chose to vote for no one, right? Just like when Nikki Haley lost Nevada to none of the above, when people showed up to the polls just to be able to say that they don't like Nikki Haley. That's a really powerful emotion, right? When you poll people, when you're trying to gauge the population, see whether they support or oppose a politician, it's really hard to gauge that support so far away from an election, right? Because people can say, hey, I don't support the president. I do support the president, but you don't quite know whether they'll stick to it so far away from a election. But what we saw in the primaries in Michigan, Minnesota, and in the GOP side in Nevada, we see that people hate some of these politicians so much that they do actually take time out of their day to go to the polling place just to vote against them. Hate can be a much more powerful emotion than love, than support. And just as 2016 really, in a lot of ways, came down to who was the most hated candidate. Obviously, people who like Trump. Many people voted for Trump because they couldn't stand Hillary Clinton. I think you're going to see 2024 boil down to the same thing. The same thing where some people are going to, they're already trying to do this with Joe Biden, trying to paint him to be the lesser of two evils, which is ironic because quite literally people are having a hard time paying for bills, paying for basic necessities. You're going to probably hear Joe Biden not take any credit for the fact that his policies, the policies of his party, have so greatly contributed to inflation in this country. You're probably, if I had to guess, you're probably going to see him blame Donald Trump for that. We've already seen some Democrat talking points blaming Donald Trump for $8 trillion in the federal deficit. It's interesting, the largest chunk of that came during the pandemic, of which those bills were advanced by Democrats in Congress. Obviously, many Republicans were on board with them, right? But when a Democrat sponsors a bill and a Republican signs it, it's a little disingenuous to say that the Republican completely owns that spending. What we saw leading into the pandemic, or whatever word you want to use for it, was actually that the deficit was getting under control, that federal revenues were going up, employment was going up, people were having more confidence in the economy, and obviously the most of that deficit spending towards the debt came during that last year and a half of Trump's presidency. Let's listen and see if they're saying anything. Oh no, it's just background noise. It's just I won't keep that, but I'll keep it a little bit low just so I can tell if someone starts talking. There we go. No, I don't like that. I'll turn that down. I'll just notice. So as you watch there, you can see more and more people coming in. There's Marco Rubio. It always amazes me how many people are willing to wait hours to sit there on the side of that center aisle, all for their chance to shake Joe Biden's hand. Now, there's a lot of calculus that goes into that. These are not people looking just for FaceTime with President Biden. They can get that any day of the week. Well, lower members of Congress probably not. But when you see Elizabeth Warren out there, Elizabeth Warren has risen to a level where she doesn't need to do this. She's doing this for the optics. She can meet with Biden pretty much whenever she wants or whenever he's available, right? She can get included in any kind of congressional delegation that goes over to the White House. These people are there so that their constituents can see them, so that their constituents, their supporters can see them for the most part, right? So you're going to see many congressmen and senators that you know. You're going to see many congressmen and senators that you don't know who have a chance to quite literally be on national television, shaking the president's hand, maybe even getting a soundbite caught by a hot mic as he walks in. This is a chance to become relevant, become very, very relevant. So we'll see. Let me see if Joe Biden is still being delayed. Be interesting to see. I have to imagine that they're going to clear that protest. Yeah, they are sitting on the ground. Palestinian protesters. Cannibal says, I would assume he will say how wonderful everything is under his guidance. Yes, he is going to say that. Now, Joe Biden has, when I looked at Trump, and this is something that I've always has really interested me. When I went to grad school, one of the courses I took, one of the papers I wrote in grad school was on presidential decision-making processes. And one of the presidents I admired most in terms of how they make a decision was always Eisenhower. Eisenhower came from the military, and he brought kind of that military chain of command structure into White House decision-making. He called it Policy Hill. Think of it like a pyramid where people on one side develop policies, right? They game plan them out, they flesh them out, and then they bring it up Policy Hill. And he's sitting at the top of Policy Hill. He decides yes or no, whether to sign or not to sign it. And then he brings it down the other side of the hill for other people to implement. That's obviously how you have to do it in the military. If you're the general in command of the army in Europe, you can't be making every decision. You can't micromanage everything. So that was something that Eisenhower really did well. You have some presidents who really want to get involved with the nitty gritty, really want to get involved with writing the executive orders. Others want to just give their basic points, have other people write them, and then say yes or no. Donald Trump, in many ways, though he wasn't obviously in the military, he came from a business background that was very similar, where he ran this big media empire, real estate empire. He can't be making every decision. So he tasks other people, whether it be his sons, his daughter, his other executives, to make decisions, bring things up to him, and have him sign off on it. Joe Biden is interesting because in one way, I think he's doing that. But I think the difference here is that I don't think Joe Biden is the one instructing the people on one side of Policy Hill to do something. I think they're doing it on their own. And I don't know if he truly understands the ramifications when it comes to signing off on these things. He's very obviously not implementing. He is not a president who gets down in the weeds and works on things day to day. No, he's very obviously not, right? There are days where he doesn't have any public speaking events. There are days where he'll have one event and he'll go to bed. He'll take a nap. He is very much not hands-on. The question is whether he is the brainchild, whether he is the expert, the genius behind initiating these policies. I don't believe that he is. I don't believe it is. Whereas with Trump, you did have that. It was either him or his close-knit set of advisors trying to implement his policy agenda, right? Steve Bannon in the early days of the Trump White House was that person. He had a list on the whiteboard, checking everything off, wanted to make sure that that all of the promises were kept. With Joe Biden, I'm not as confident that Joe Biden is the one calling the shots, initiating things. I don't think that he has the mental capacity to do it, nor do I think he has the wherewithal, the foresight, the ability to look at his surroundings and understand what needs to be done. No, these are most likely his cabinet officials who are driving the ball, moving the ball forward on this. And the ultimate question is whether or not he is the one actually signing off on this stuff. You like to think he is, right? You like to think he is, but it's hard to, looking at him, seeing how hard of a time Joe Biden has with basic recall, with basic conversational skills. It is very hard to imagine that he is going through this and giving his informed consent. That's an old pandemic word, right? Informed consent. It's very hard to believe that he is, right? And the interesting thing is he doesn't seem to ever want to take the blame. Oh, we're seeing some movement at the White House now. He doesn't ever want to take any blame for the consequences of the problems that he causes. Now, that's not unique to him. Politicians don't like to take blame. But when you look at it through this lens, you might say, well, wait a minute, maybe Joe Biden isn't taking the blame because it wasn't his idea. It's hard to take the blame for something when your involvement in a policy is limited, quite literally, to a pen signature. And nowadays, you don't even need that. You can have it can be auto-penned, right? He can say, yeah, I agree, just go ahead and sign it in the auto-pen, which is just a machine that signs his signature for him. That is the world we live in. So on the one hand, you're like, well, is he just like every politician? He won't accept that he did something wrong. Here he is leaving the White House now, Joe Biden leaving the White House. Is he like every other politician who won't admit that he did something wrong? Or is it literally the fact that these weren't his policies? So why would he fall on the sword when this was a proposal from Alejandro Mayorkas at DHS, right? Do we think that Joe Biden is saying rescind all of these Trump policies? Well, probably. He did probably say rescind everything. But chances are Joe Biden isn't the one making the nitty-gritty decisions in DHS, in Border Patrol, to do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. Chances are it's not him. He's delegated that responsibility. So, of course, he's not going to take the blame for the migrant crisis, the illegal alien invasion. He can legitimately argue that it isn't his fault. But that's really not how it works, is it? He's delegated that responsibility. The buck does stop with him. So it'll be interesting to see whether he accepts the blame for anything. Whether he accepts the blame for anything. I'm going to venture no. I'm going to venture no. There's been some betting lines on things he's going to mention. I think we know what he's going to mention. He's going to mention guns, gun control. He's going to mention AR-15s. I would bet my house that he is going to say something along the lines of, you don't need an AR-15 to hunt a deer. He said it in I think every State of the Union address so far. He's going to say something to that effect. We know that he's going to talk, obviously, about Ukraine. Zelensky's wife apparently was invited to attend, but last I saw, she wasn't going to attend. I don't know if that is some miscommunication or whatnot, but last I saw that she was snubbing. That'll be interesting. We know that one of the guests is going to be a woman from Texas who claims that she couldn't have an abortion after Dobbs was decided. We'll fact check that in real time because that actually was not the case. That was the problem of Texas doctors not correctly interpreting the law. Every state, with very few exceptions, all of the states that took action against abortion after Roe versus Wade fell left exceptions in place for when a mother's life would be in jeopardy, and clarified that when there is a miscarriage, the procedure that it would take to treat that miscarriage, removing the unfortunately deceased baby from the womb, does not qualify as an abortion. Now, I cover this in my book, The Conservative's Guide to Winning Every Abortion Argument, which is available on Amazon and other booksellers. But when you look at abortion is about intent, right? There's many different ways to carry out an abortion. It can be chemical with pills or medications. It could be surgical. It could be quite literally punching someone in the stomach, right? It's all about the intent. The intent being to end an unborn child's life. Well, there are different types of abortion procedures, and I outline this in my book. But like one of the ways you can do this is a D&C, which is a surgical method. But D&Cs are used for many different purposes, right? They can be used to biopsy a growth in the uterus that might be suspect. You want to go in and slice off a little bit. There are lots of, obviously, after a miscarriage, you would need to do that. So the procedure itself is not the abortion. The intent is the abortion. So when you see people, in this case, I believe her last name is Cox, in Texas, claiming that she didn't have access to abortion. No, she wasn't looking for abortion. And in that case, her doctors didn't even make the proper arguments. The Supreme Court, I believe that was the case, tossed it out for not making the right arguments. It's all basically semantics, and they're counting on you not understanding the terminology, the language, and the arguments, which is why I write the books that I write, because these are complex debate topics that really don't need to be that complex. And thank you to everyone who's purchased my books already. 3 of them available on Amazon. I'll put them up on the screen right now. Conservatives' Guide to Winning Every Gun Control Argument. These are big. Every gun control argument, obviously every abortion argument, and my latest book out this year, just last month, Conservatives' Guide to Winning Every Immigration Argument. If you enjoy getting in debates with liberals, whether it be online or in person, or just want to know why things are the way they are, highly recommend that you check out these books online. So we can listen in. Speaker of the House Johnson is just reading the little bits.
From Minnesota, Mr. Emmer. The gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Stefanik.
Taking the roll. So roll call. We don't need to quite so soon jump in there. Taking roll call, and I'll leave the subtitles on screen so we can see that as they come in. But yeah, so he's going to talk about abortion. He's going to try and galvanize that. But I follow a lot of people on the left, and what's been interesting is that the abortion narrative coming out of the Biden White House isn't hitting the way that I think Biden wants it to hit. Rather than it being a galvanizing force, a lot of leftists, a lot of liberals are seeing that as an attempt to hold their vote hostage. They believe that Joe Biden has the power right now. The Democrats have the power right now to take action on abortion. And they might. They might have the power with how slim the GOP majority is in the House. They might have the ability to get a couple of GOP congressmen, a couple of GOP senators, and squeeze something through, a line item, a rider in a massive spending bill. But so the left believes that Joe Biden has the power to do this now. They're angry that instead of doing it now, he's demanding that they vote for him again in order for him to do it. The same deal with student loan debt. They believe that he has the power, even though the Supreme Court says that he doesn't. They believe that he has the power, but that he is basically holding back to make sure that it's still a political point, a political tool that they can use to try and galvanize the base and get more supporters to vote for them. So we're going to see that. We're probably going to see him blame Republicans for the border, even though the border crisis, the illegal alien invasion, has quite literally been caused by him undoing all of the Trump administration's policies. I mean, that was the first thing he did when he started occupying the Oval Office, occupying the White House. Joe Biden rescinded pretty much every Donald Trump immigration policy. And Mayorkas at the time went out on television and bragged about it. Bragged that he had rescinded all of it. Well, what happens now? Well, now we have this crisis. Some of the things, and I outline this in my book, but some of the things that we could probably use right about now. One of those was a policy that Trump had implemented, which was giving DNA tests to people who claimed to be family units when they were apprehended by Border Patrol. A very common practice at the southern border is for the cartels, the human smugglers, to basically take children and use them so that their paying clients who want to cross the United States can pretend to have a child. Because the way U.S. immigration law is written, they are, well, it's actually not even the law, it's just a court, it's just the Flores decision. The administration is mandated to treat children and family units less harshly. So if a child is in the group that's apprehended, they have to be released from custody within 21 days. So quite literally, if you cross the border with a child that you claim to be your child, that child is a get out of jail free card, is a get out of detention free card. Literally, it's like Monopoly card. Trump was rolling out DNA tests. It was in a pilot program. He was rolling out DNA tests. And what those DNA tests were showing was that among the illegal aliens who were suspected of being fraudulent family units, they found a shocking, it was 20, 30, 40% of those suspected turned out to be actually false family units. Now, there are exceptions here. Of course, they could be adopted, right? They could be adopted. Chances are they're not. If they say someone's their TO, maybe they're using the non-familiar way that Hispanic cultures can call any family friend an uncle. Chances are no. Joe Biden rescinded that. Joe Biden rescinded that directive, and they are no longer testing on the border. And what are the consequences of that? Consequences of that is that you quite literally are not finding the human traffickers. You're quite literally not finding the fake families. Well, when you have to release someone within 21 days, is there enough time to really do a lot of vetting? The administration will say yes, but they quite literally just caught, what was it, Somali terrorist? They had released him, and he was allowed to wander the U.S. for a year before they realized what they'd done, and they caught him. And by the way, that terrorist, his specialty was smuggling weapons. Interesting. I wonder what he did in the year that he was allowed to wander the United States. So here we got the members of the Supreme Court entering. We're going to see if all of the Supreme Court members show up. Not always the case. Sometimes you'll see members of the Supreme Court opt out. I believe Clarence Thomas has, in some cases, opted out. Let's count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is Jackson, 6. We'll have to see when they pan whether all 9 of the members of the Supreme Court are there, but there have been years where some of them have chosen not to attend, or in the case of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, has chosen to attend, but slept through the entire event. It looks like not the entire court is there. It looks like you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. So missing just a few. Looks like you're missing Alito. Looks like you're missing Clarence Thomas. And looks like you're missing Amy Coney Barrett. But maybe they're just not in the frame that I could see. Cannonball commenting on Rumble that it's Obama. Come on, yeah. Talking about who's making decisions. Yeah, it probably is Obama, which is why I don't think it's fair when the left goes after Trump for accidentally calling Biden Obama. We've all done it at some point, right? But it becomes a little bit, oh, there's Anthony Kennedy. He's there. It becomes at some point, you have to say, well, is it a slip of the tongue, or is that really him just being honest and admitting that Barack Obama is the shadow president calling the shots behind the scenes? So you have more senators coming in. There's obviously Bernie Sanders. There's Senator Kennedy from Louisiana. Different senators entering the hall right now. We've got some what C-SPAN is calling crosstalk. We will see if Joe Biden has made it. Let me look on Twitter. I'm looking at my Rumble stream on the left, and that's way behind. That's why I was just way behind. Let's see if Joe Biden has made it. There was a joke going around on social media that there were going to be intermissions this year. That's the kind of joke that you had to actually figure out whether it was a joke or not, because you wouldn't put it past them to have an intermission for Joe Biden. This is someone who wanted to debate sitting down, who wanted extra bathroom breaks during his debates. And that was 4 years ago. So a lot can happen in 4 years. There we have Justice Jackson talking with, oh, he's there. Joe Biden made it to the Capitol. So they cleared the protesters. I wonder what happened to those leftist protesters. I wonder if they got charged with interfering with a congressional event. I wonder if they got charged with trespassing. I wonder if they got charged with any of the crimes that were levied against January 6ers. Also, news out this week that the appellate court for DC, a whole liberal bench, 3 liberal judges, all have ruled that I think somewhere around 100 some odd January 6ers had their sentences elevated far too high than they should have been. Far too high than they should have been, which is something we've been saying forever. When you grow up, like I have, watching Code Pink protesting the Iraq War, disrupting congressional hearings, disrupting congressional votes, what seemed like a daily occurrence, and it was just being a revolving door where they'd be booked, fingerprinted, mugshot, released, and they'd be doing it the next day and nothing bad happened to them. It's always been ridiculous to see. It's been ridiculous to see how much stricter they've been when Republicans are the ones getting arrested for being in the wrong place at the wrong time in the Capitol building. Was that George Santos there? I'm not really listening. I wonder if he's at the Capitol building. Yeah, George Santos is there. That is interesting. Oh, so that's the thing. You're allowed back if you're a former member. That I didn't know. So former members of Congress can return for the State of the Union. So George Santos is back for the State of the Union address. That, to me, has been one of the dumbest, probably the dumbest move Republicans have made. Now, they've made a lot of dumb moves. One of the dumbest moves Republicans have made, especially this year when their majority in the House is so slim. We saw that the impeachment vote against Mayorkas failed the first time because they removed George Santos. If they didn't remove George Santos, Mayorkas is impeached the first time around, and they don't have to wait to get more votes. We've seen votes fail because Mayorkas has been removed. And that's why I said from the beginning, if your goal as a Republican Congress is to pass conservative bills, makes zero sense strategically to remove one of the most conservative voting members of Congress. It makes no sense. Makes no sense whatsoever. Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley there on screen with little Marco. It always makes me laugh about who keeps the Trump nicknames and who doesn't. Lion Ted, Lyin apostrophe, as Trump used to say, got turned into Lion, Lion. And Marco, I guess they dropped the little Marco. I don't think that Nikki Haley is going to drop Bird Brain quite as quickly as some other members of Congress, some other competitors have. Looks like they are getting Joe Biden's speech up there on the dais, on the podium. One of the betting lines I wanted to see, didn't see it, was whether Joe Biden was going to actually accidentally read out stage directions. Like, pause here, pause for applause. That's something he's been known to do. They write the stage directions in his speech, like pause, wait for applause. When you have what Joe Biden has, which I've long hypothesized is either dementia, Alzheimer's, or some type of mental decline, age-related mental decline, it becomes harder to run the filter that stops all of us from saying those kinds of things, saying just what comes out to our mind, which is why you see so many of Joe Biden's speeches, he stops in the middle of it just to remark on what he's seeing. Yeah, just to remark on what he is seeing. Mandy, yes, the famous ones he did is end of quote. That is one of the famous ones that he's done. As you start suffering, and we've all experienced this, I don't want to presume. Many of us have experienced this. Chances are you know someone in your life who has gone through some form of age-related dementia or Alzheimer's, and you've seen firsthand what it does. It's a terrible disease. On the one hand, it's part of life. We all get older and we all lose our fastball. On the other hand, you recognize that if someone's reached the point where you don't want them to have the keys to the car, maybe they shouldn't also have the nuclear football. If you're worried about if someone left the stove on, maybe they shouldn't be engaging in international diplomacy on the world stage with like huge stakes for World War III. But I mean, that's just one man's opinion, I guess. Welcome to everyone watching. We're going to be getting started soon. Joe Biden will enter, and when that happens, I will turn up the volume. I will turn up the volume, and I will try not to talk over him. I'll try not to pause. I'm not going to pause it. But I will be live reacting in real time, and I will be taking notes. And then afterwards, we'll go through the notes, and we will talk about the lies. Now, there are going to be a ton of lies. I think the over-under in the betting markets is 11.5 fact checks from Washington Post tomorrow, which I think is a crazy line. They're basically saying that if you bet the over, that means he has to be fact-checked on 12 specific lies, or what they call non-truths. They only called them lies during the Trump years. Now they call them non-truths or whatever. It's like not a truth. 11.5 seems like a really high line. Not to say that I don't think he's going to lie that much. I think he is going to lie plenty. But I don't expect the Washington Post to run out in front and count all of his lies. Remember, famously, they had a website set up to track every single one of Donald Trump's lies, and they really took some liberties in what they called lies. They shut that website down after Joe Biden was sworn in by saying that it wasn't important anymore to track presidential lies or falsehoods. Which is, again, it's one of those things you just scratch your chin and you're just like, that's interesting. If we lived in a fair country that actually obeyed the rule of law and listened to the law, all of these news outlets would be prosecuted for unlawful in-kind campaign contributions because they are quite literally trying to help Democrat political campaigns, politicians. Joe Biden. So we know that Joe Biden is in the Capitol building. He's made it there. And welcome to everyone tuning in now, whether it be on Rumble, on Twitter, on YouTube. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If this is your first time finding us, thank you for joining us. We go live Monday, Wednesday, Friday, middle of the day, talking about political news, commentary, things like that. So if you haven't already, do hit that subscribe button, hit the follow button, give us a thumbs up. As I said, when this starts, I'm going to try not to really talk over him because we all want to hear what he has to say, even though it's really not his words. Try not to talk over him. I am going to write down notes. Mr. Producer Josh will be joining us about 30 minutes in with the time difference. He is just getting out of one of his work commitments. So he'll be here about 30 minutes in. So I'm going to try and take notes. I'll react in real time. You'll hear me scoffing. You'll hear me saying BS or bullshit or whatever it is. But I'm not going to go into long fact checks in real time because you do that and you turn an hour speech into 3 hours and no one wants that. So I'm going to take notes and fact check, do a lot of that fact checking at the very end. So how's everyone doing? Usually I have a drinking game. I don't have a drinking game tonight. I feel bad, but there are a couple of social pages that have drinking games for how you can get completely drunk if you want to. In years past, one of my favorite things to add to my drinking game is take a sip if you see Nancy Pelosi clapping like a seal. When she was on there, she used to clap like that. It was very strange. Let's see if I can find some of the... Oh, here's one. Okay, so this is one drinking game that Steve Loves Ammo posted on Twitter. Take a drink if he says democracy. Ooh, that's so bad. Take a drink if he says Ukraine. Take a drink if he mumbles. Take a drink if he says MAGA. If he mentions 2024 election, take 2. If he mentions Donald Trump, take 2. Assault weapons or Green New Deal, take 3 sips. Russia, take 4. And if Joe Biden admits that we live in a constitutional republic, which he won't do, drink all the beers. Drink all the beers. So here, I believe we have, that was Janet Yellen. I believe this is his cabinet. We'll see them coming. I'm going to turn up the volume a little bit. Let me know if everyone can hear the volume from the video. in the comment if you can hear it. Want to make sure that you can hear that. John McKee says, howdy, howdy, John. Welcome to the party. Let me know in the comment section what your drink of choice is tonight. I am going with, turn a little bit down, it's a little bit loud in my ear. I am going with Lone Star beer for a little bit. And then probably going to switch over to Dos Equis, which I always like doing on screen because I have a green screen and it makes the beer half disappear. One of the reasons I like to drink Rolling Rock when I do these streams, because the completely green beer, completely green bottle disappears. And that almost becomes a little philosophy thought experiment. Is he drinking? Well, if you can't see it, he's not drinking. This procession can take a while. And as I said earlier, to anyone who wasn't on, welcome. As I said earlier, this is partially trying to get FaceTime in front of these cabinet members and Joe Biden, but also members of Congress trying to get put on camera for the entire country to see them shoulder to shoulder, shaking hands with these members of the cabinet and Joe Biden. I always question whether the FaceTime is really important because they could get FaceTime anytime they want if they're in the same party. It always, to me, has seemed like it's more important to be seen doing it. To be seen doing it, which is why you'll see AOC is over there. It's a who's who cast of characters of the Democrats you expect. There's Merrick Garland, who is a traitor. Sorry, I'm gonna say it as it is. Interesting that as much as Republicans can't stand Merrick Garland, Democrats also can't stand him, believing that he is going too easy on Trump. So we have concerns that he is weaponizing the DOJ against Trump, and the left is concerned that he hasn't already buried Trump, hasn't already locked him up. I wonder if we're going to see any other former members of Congress. We saw George Santos, who was there because he is a former member of Congress. That's a pretty epic troll job on his part, right? They kicked him out, and he's right back in it. Right back in it. He's been doing monster numbers on Cameo, which is Cameo. You can basically pay him money, pay George Santos money to do a little video for you. I believe last time I checked, he was making more recording videos for people than he would have made as a member of Congress. Mandy is saying that McCarthy isn't there. That doesn't surprise me. He wasn't kicked out spitefully. He resigned and retired spitefully himself. So that doesn't surprise me. McCarthy is the I'm taking my ball and I'm going home wing of the Republican Party. If he can't be speaker, he'll leave and deny Republicans, at least for a couple months, one vote that they need to pass legislation. So almost getting to that time. I'll say it again. I'm not going to fact check in real time as much. I'm going to obviously scoff. I might throw in a little bit of a reaction, but I'm going to be taking notes about the falsehoods that I hear and then getting to them at the end. Otherwise, this is going to be a super long stream and no one wants... It's bad enough that we're about to listen to Joe Biden for 59, 69 minutes. 69 and a half is the betting line for how long this speech will be. 69 and a half, which remarkably, the bettors, the bookies think that Joe Biden's speech is going to be 10 minutes longer than it was last year, which is wild. Anyone who's seen Joe Biden knows that he's not capable of speaking for longer than he could last year. Like, come on. A lot of bets I would love to see is he wearing an adult diaper? I would love to see that. How you verify that, I don't know. It'd be interesting to have a blood test for performance-enhancing drugs. What cocktail is Joe Biden on to allow him to pay attention and stick to the script for an hour? Well, we know what he's on. We know what people who are going through Alzheimer's or Alzheimer's dementia, we know that what they are prescribed. They are prescribed basically a mild form of amphetamine, like basically Adderall, like for what you prescribe someone with ADD. You, just like it has someone who has ADD, it helps them be super attentive. You give an Alzheimer patient this drug and it helps them be super attentive as well. Now, the problem is the longer you take it, the less it works. And here he is. So I'm going to turn this up and scoff as he says bullshit. Enjoy, if that's what we do at these things. Now you'll see, I'll talk a little bit during this. You'll see he's allowed to kiss people in this line because, as we all know, the CDC declared this past week that COVID is no worse than the flu. So they admitted what we have long argued. We've argued for years. They finally admit it. So now, Kissy Kissy is back in the playbook. Over under 3. How many people's hair is he going to sniff? Over under 2.5. We saw 1 kiss. I bet you there was a sniff involved. So I'm going to put that at 1. I'm going to say there's already been a sniff. I'd say there's been 1 sniff. Let's watch. I got to know if there's a sniff. He sniffs women. He doesn't sniff men. He's not an equal opportunity sniffer. Another sign that someone is on Adderall, someone is on some form of amphetamines, is when you see their eyes, their pupils are so dilated that their eyes appear to be black. So, Joe Biden, here, with big bright lights on him, his pupils should be really small. So you should see more color, less black in his eye. But what you'll notice as he gets to the stage is his pupils are so dilated, you would think he's walking around in the dark. Because, right, your pupils get dilated as you need to try and get more light in when there's less light available. As there's more light on you, like I have all these lights on me, your pupils shrink down because if they enlarge, you'd be blinded. And anyone knows this if you've ever gone to an eye doctor and they've dilated your pupils. If you go out, you can't drive really. You can't even walk outside without sunglasses because it actually is physically painful to be in the sun with dilated pupils. Here you're going to see Joe Biden under all of these lights, again, looking like he has no color in his eyes, like he is walking around in a dark bedroom trying to find the light switch, trying to wait to adjust to the darkness, waiting for his cat vision to set into effect. Oh, we're gonna get a sniff here. We did just get someone who said save democracy. We have Marjorie Taylor Greene is protesting there. Ah. Handed her a button. Hand him a button. Say her name. And he had to ask, who is this? What is this for? Riley, obviously the young girl who was murdered by an illegal alien. I believe while she was out on a run. And the media tried to make this out to be why women shouldn't run alone? Something like that. Ridiculous. He's very obviously not going to say her name, but kudos to her for handing him the button. It's not going to do anything with it. He doesn't care. Right? Laken Riley, that is just one of the many deaths that is acceptable. Right? When their goal is open borders, there are a lot of deaths that they're okay with. Quite literally, they are happy to sacrifice the American people at the altar to their open border immigration agenda. No, he's not going to say Lincoln Riley's name. Not a chance. Oh, we got a sniff. We got a sniff. That's 2 sniffs that I saw. I might have missed a sniff. But he went in for that kiss nose first. You could tell. Oh. Okay, so she's just saying you're the best. You're the best ever. No one actually believes that, right? Oh, is there a sniff? That's a sniff. That's a sniff. I'm saying that the over hit. I'm saying that the over for sniffs just hit. The line that I myself created, 2.5 sniffs. I'm saying he hit 3 sniffs. They are hyping him up the way you would hype a small child up for a solo at their concert. You're going to do great. Are they trying to manifest that into being? 4 more years. Good God. That's a sniff. That was an inhale for sure. Democrats taking advantage of the fact that this is before Labor Day, so they can all wear white. No, they wear white for gun control or some nonsense. Joe Biden is now shaking the hands of the Supreme Court justices that continually slap him down. And no, not all of the Supreme Court justices seem to be there. We got a limp-wristed salute from Joe Biden right there. It'll be interesting to see whether he can keep it together. I'm looking at his eyes. His eyes look like a horror movie. All black. No, I'm not seeing any color in his eyes whatsoever. Which, again, as I mentioned earlier, is a sign of amphetamine use, which is the drug that doctors will often prescribe when dementia patients, Alzheimer patients, desperately need to be lucid and all together for a short period of time. Now, obviously, the more you use it, the less it works. But you get about 30-40 minutes, it seems, on Joe when he has these events. So we'll see. We'll see if he can hold his shit together. Pardon my French. Oh, I said pardon my French. It's nighttime. It's after dark. Everyone gets a handshake. Of course, of course. Mr. Producer Josh is on his way back. And I'm going to turn up the volume. As I said again, I'm not going to try and interrupt too much. But I will be taking notes for fact checks at the conclusion. Again, the betting line set this about 59, 69 minutes. 69 and a half minutes. So, John McKee, there'll be an outbreak of COVID tomorrow. No, there'll be an outbreak of the flu. They're not calling it COVID anymore. They're calling it basically the flu. All right, here we go. Buckle up. Drink if you got it. Let me know if the volume's okay with this. If it needs to go up or down.
Good evening. Good evening. If I were smart, I'd go home now.
Yeah. I don't know what happened. No, that wasn't me.
Mr. Speaker, Madam Vice President, members of Congress, my fellow Americans, in January 1941, Franklin Roosevelt came to this chamber to speak to the nation, and he said, "I address you at a moment unprecedented in the history of the Union. Hitler was on the march. War was raging in Europe. President Roosevelt's purpose was to wake up Congress and alert the American people that this was no ordinary time. Freedom and democracy were under assault in the world. Tonight,
Democracy.
I come to this same chamber to address the nation. Now, it's we who face an unprecedented moment in the history of the Union. And yes, my purpose tonight is to wake up the Congress and alert the American people that this is no ordinary moment either. Not since President Lincoln and the Civil War have freedom and democracy been under assault at home
Oh my
as they
God.
are today. What makes our moment rare is that freedom and democracy are under attack both at home and overseas at the very same time. Overseas, Putin of Russia is on the march, invading Ukraine and sowing chaos throughout Europe and beyond. If anybody in this room thinks Putin will stop at Ukraine, I assure you he will not. But Ukraine can stop Putin. Ukraine can stop Putin if we stand with Ukraine and provide the weapons that need
Yeah.
to defend itself.
Just give them all of our money. Just give them all of our money.
That is all. That is all Ukraine is asking. They're not asking for American soldiers. In fact, there are no American soldiers at war in Ukraine, and I'm determined to keep it that way. But now,
I don't know if that's actually true.
assistance to Ukraine is being blocked by those who want to walk away from our world leadership. It wasn't long ago when a Republican president named Ronald Reagan thundered, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." Now my predecessor, a former Republican president, tells Putin, quote, "Do whatever the hell you want."
It's not what he said. It's not what he
That's a
said.
quote.
Oh my
A
God.
former president actually said that, bowing down to a Russian leader, I think it's outrageous, it's dangerous, and it's unacceptable.
It's not what he said. Okay. Just a flagrant lie.
America
Flagrant lie.
is
Okay.
a founding member of NATO, the military alliance of democratic nations created after World War II to prevent war and keep the peace. And today, we've made NATO stronger than ever. We welcomed Finland to the alliance last year. And just this morning, Sweden officially joined, and their minister is here tonight. Come here, stand up. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Of course they joined. They want us to pay for their defense.
And they know how to fight.
Of course.
Mr. Prime Minister,
Yeah.
welcome to
The
NATO,
Swedes are known for their
strongest
fighting, of
military
course.
alliance the world has ever seen. I say this to Congress, we have to stand up to Putin. Send me a bipartisan national security bill. History is literally watching. History is watching. If the United States walks away, it will put Ukraine at risk. Europe is at risk. The free world will be at risk, emboldening others to do what they wish to do us harm. My message to President Putin, who I've known for a long time, is simple. We will not walk away.
Kamala Harris's legs are going to be sore if she
We
keeps
will
standing
not
up every
bow
time.
down. I will not bow down. In a literal sense, history is watching. History is watching. Just like history watched 3 years ago on January 6th, when insurrectionists stormed this very Capitol and placed a dagger to the throat of American democracy. Many of you are here on that darkest of days.
Democracy,
We
take a
all
drink.
saw with our own eyes the insurrectionists were not patriots. They'd come to stop the peaceful transfer of power, to overturn the will of the people. January 6th lies about the 2020 election and the plots to steal the election
Did he come out swinging with
posed
J6
the
lies?
gravest threat to U.S. democracy since the Civil War. But they failed. America stood.
Oh my God.
America stood strong and democracy prevailed. We must be honest. The threat to democracy must be defended. My predecessor and some of you here seek to bury the truth about January 6th. I will not do that. This is the moment to speak the truth and to bury the lies. Here's the simple truth. You can't love your country only when you win. As I've done ever since being elected to office, I ask all of you without regard to party to join together and defend democracy. Remember your oath of office of defending against all threats, foreign and domestic. Respect free and fair elections, restore trust in our institutions, and make clear political violence has absolutely no place in America, zero place.
Except Antifa,
Again.
right?
It's not hyperbole to suggest history is watching. We're watching. Your children and grandchildren will read about this day and what we do. History is watching another assault on freedom. Joining us tonight is Latoya Beasley, a social worker from Birmingham, Alabama. 14 months ago, she and her husband welcomed a baby girl thanks to the miracle of IVF.
Oh, geez.
She scheduled treatments to have that second child. But the Alabama Supreme Court shut down IVF treatments across the state, unleashed by a Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade. She was told her dream would have to wait. What her family had got through should never have happened. Unless Congress acts, it could happen again. So tonight, let's stand up for families like hers. To my friends across the aisle, don't keep this waiting any longer. Guarantee the right to AVF. Guarantee it nationwide.
Going to talk about this at the end. Miss Producer Josh, we are taking notes on fact checks, and we're going to get to them at the very end, just so that we don't have to break up the video too much.
Like most Americans, I believe Roe v. Wade got it right. I thank Vice President Harris for being an incredible leader, defending reproductive freedom, and so much more. Thank you. My predecessor came to office determined to see Roe v. Wade overturned. He's the reason it was overturned, and he brags about it. Look at the chaos that has resulted. Joining us tonight is Kate Cox, the wife and mother from Dallas. She's become pregnant again and had a fetus of a fatal condition. Her doctor told Kate that her own life and her ability to have children in the future were at risk if she didn't act. Because Texas law banned her ability to act, Kate and her husband had to leave the state to get what she needed. What her family got through should have never happened as well, but it's happening in too many others. There are state laws banning the freedom to choose, criminalizing doctors, forcing survivors of rape and incest to leave their states to get the treatment they need. Many of you in this chamber and my predecessor are promising to pass a national ban on reproductive freedom. My God, what freedom else would you take away? Look, it's a decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. The Supreme Court majority wrote the following. And with all due respect, justices, women are not without electoral power. Electoral or political power.
One
You're
gaff.
about to realize just how much you're right about that.
He is scolding them.
The Supreme Court.
Shit.
Clearly.
Bring down the excuse.
Clearly. Those bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade have no clue about the power of women. But they found out when reproductive freedom was on the ballot. We won in 2022 and 2020, and we'll win again in 2024. If you, the American people, send me a Congress that supports the right to choose, I promise you, I'll restore Roe v. Wade as the law of the land again.
I gotta write down.
Folks, America cannot go back. I'm here tonight to show what I believe is the way forward, because I know how far we come. 4 years ago next week, before I came to office, the country was hit by the worst pandemic and the worst economic crisis in a century. Remember the fear, record losses? Remember the spikes in crime and the murder rate, raging virus that took more than 1 million American lives, of loved ones, millions left behind? A mental health crisis of isolation and loneliness. A president, my predecessor, failed the most basic presidential duty that he owes to American people, the duty to care. I think that's unforgivable. I came to office determined to get us through one of the toughest periods in the nation's history. We have. It doesn't make news, but in 1,000 cities and towns, the American people are writing the greatest comeback story never told.
They control all the media. They say it's never told. Got it. Got it.
So let's tell the story here. Tell it here and now. America's comeback is building the future of American possibilities, building an economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down, investing in all America, in all Americans, to make sure everyone has a fair shot, and we leave no one behind. The pandemic no longer controls our lives. The vaccines that saved us from COVID are now being used to beat cancer, turning setback into comeback. That's what America does. That's what America does.
This is a campaign speech.
It is. There doesn't mean yet.
My inherited economy is on the brink. Now our economy is literally the envy of the world. 15 million new jobs in just 3 years. A record. A record.
50 million.
Unemployment
People laid off went back.
at 50-year lows. A record 16 million Americans are starting small businesses, and each one is a literal act of hope. With historic job growth and small business growth for Black and Hispanics and Asian Americans, 800,000 new manufacturing jobs in America and counting. Where is it written we can't be the manufacturing capital of the world? We are, we will. More people have health insurance today. More people have health insurance today than ever before. The racial wealth gap is as small as it's been in 20 years. Wages keep going up, inflation keeps coming down. Inflation has dropped from 9% to 3%, the lowest in the world, and tending lower. The landing is and will be soft. And now, instead of importing foreign products and exporting American jobs, we're exporting American products and creating American jobs. Right here in America, where they belong. And it takes time, but the American people are beginning to feel it. Consumer studies show consumer confidence is soaring. Buy America. has been the law of the land since the 1930s.
It's just such
Past
bullshit.
administrations, including my predecessor, including some Democrats as well in the past, failed to buy American. Not anymore. On my watch, federal projects that you fund, like helping build American roads, bridges, and highways, will be made with American products and built by American workers.
That's a Trump executive order. He's just taking credit for Trump executive
Creating
orders.
good paying American
It's been
jobs.
working.
And thanks to our CHIPS and Science Act, the United States is investing more in research and development than ever before. During the pandemic, a shortage of semiconductors, chips, that drove up the price of everything from cell phones to automobiles. And by the way, we invented those chips right here in America. Well, instead of having to import them, private companies are now investing billions of dollars to build new chip factories here in America, creating tens of thousands of jobs.
Trump
Many
deal.
of those jobs paying $100,000 a year and don't require a college degree.
Making chips?
Like,
In fact,
never got it.
my policies have attracted $650 billion in private sector investment in clean energy, advanced manufacturing, creating tens of thousands of jobs here in America.
He's anything that he's coughing like here.
And thanks to our bipartisan infrastructure law, 46,000 new projects have been announced all across your communities. And by the way, I noticed some of you strongly voted against it, or they're
Good
cheering
shot.
on that money coming in. I like it. I'm with you. I'm with you. And if any of you don't want that money in your district, just let me know. Modernizing our roads and bridges, ports and airports, public transit systems. Removing poisonous lead pipes so every child can drink clean water without risk of brain damage.
The issue isn't usually the lead pipes, it's the coating
Providing
that's on it.
affordable
fails.
high-speed internet for every American, no matter where you live, urban, suburban, or rural communities, in red states and blue states. Record investments in tribal communities. Because of my investment in family farms, because I invested in family farms led by my Secretary of Agriculture, who knows more about this than anybody I know, we're better able to stay in the family for those farms and their children and grandchildren won't have to leave home to make a living. It's transformative.
Well, pause it real quick. Joe Biden has been smacked down by courts because he tried to have his Department of Agriculture only help black farmers and not help white farmers. That was smacked down. I had to jump in and say this because it's just wild.
The great comeback story is Belvidere, Illinois, home to an auto plant for nearly 60 years. Before I came to office, the plant was on its way to shutting down. Thousands of workers feared for their livelihoods. Hope was fading. Then I was elected to office and we raised the Belvedere repeatedly with auto companies knowing unions would make all the difference. The UAW worked like hell to keep the plant open and get these jobs back, and together we succeeded. Instead of auto factories shutting down, auto factories reopening, and new state-of-the-art battery factories being built to power those cars there at the same.
Same car is always good.
The folks at Belvedere, I say, instead of your town being left behind, your community is moving forward again. Because instead of watching auto jobs in the future go overseas, 4,000 union jobs with higher wages are building the future in Belvedere right here in America. Here tonight is UAW President Shawn Fain, a great friend and a great labor leader. Shawn, where are you? Stand up.
Please, run through that.
And Dawn Sim, third generation worker, UAW worker at Belvedere. Shawn, I was proud to be the first president to stand on the picket line. And today, Dawn has a good job in her hometown, providing stability for her family and pride and dignity as well. Showing once again, Wall Street didn't build America. They're not bad guys. They didn't build it, though. The middle class built the country, and unions built the middle class.
Union. Need that vote.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
I say to the American people, when America gets knocked down, we get back up. We keep
Rocky
going.
River, like the photo.
That's America. That's you, the American people. It's because of you America's coming back. It's because of you our future is brighter. It's because of you that tonight we can proudly say the state of our union is strong and getting stronger.
No, Johnson's doing a really good job.
Tonight, I want to talk about the future of possibilities that we can build together. A future where the days of trickle-down economics are over and the wealthy and the biggest corporations no longer get all the tax breaks. And by the way, I understand corporations. I come from a state that has more corporations invested than every one of your states in the United States combined. And I represented it for 36 years. I'm not anti-corporation, but I grew up in a home where trickle-down economics didn't put much on my dad's kitchen table. That's why I determined to turn things around so middle class does well. When they do well, the poor are way up and the wealthy still do very well. We all do well. And there's more to do to make sure you're feeling the benefits of all we're doing. Americans pay more for prescription drugs than anywhere in the world. It's wrong, and I'm ending it.
Oh, he can just do that.
He ended Trump's executive order, which would have fixed it.
Just
because he wanted to take credit for it.
For the law that I proposed and signed, not one of you Republican buddies voted for it. We finally beat Big Pharma. Instead of paying $400 a month or thereabouts for insulin with diabetes, and it only costs $10 to make, they only get paid $35 a month now and still make a healthy profit. And I want to, but what to do next? I want to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for every American who needs it. Everyone.
That's Trump's executive order. That was Trump.
For years, people have talked about it, but finally we got it done and gave Medicare the power to negotiate lower prices on prescription drugs, just like the VA is able to do for veterans. That's not just saving seniors money.
That was Trump.
It's saving taxpayers money. We cut the federal deficit by $160 billion.
Bernie mask.
I made money off that appearance.
Medicare
Right?
will no longer have to pay those exorbitant prices to Big Pharma. This year, Medicare is negotiating lower prices for some of the costliest drugs on the market to treat everything from heart disease to arthritis. It's now time to go further and give Medicare the power to negotiate lower prices for 500 different drugs over the next decade.
More power, more power,
They're
more
making
power.
a lot of money,
All I
guys.
ask for.
And they'll still be extremely profitable. Will not only save lives, it will save taxpayers another $200 billion. Starting next year, the same law caps total prescription drug costs for seniors on Medicare at $2,000 a year, even for expensive cancer drugs that cost $10,000, $12,000, $15,000. Now I want to cap prescription drug costs at $2,000 a year for everyone.
Price control. Third one, correct.
Folks, I'm going to get in trouble for saying that, but if you want to get an Air Force One and fly to Toronto, Berlin, Moscow, even Moscow, probably. And bring your prescription with you, and I promise you I'll get it for you for 40% the cost you're paying now. Same company, same drug.
You just
same
offered to
price.
bring people to Moscow?
Folks, the Affordable Care Act, the old Obamacare, it's still a very big deal. Over 100 million of you can no longer be denied health insurance because of pre-existing condition. But my predecessor, and many in this chamber, want to take this prescription drug away by repealing Affordable Care Act. I'm not going to let that happen. We stopped you 50 times before and we'll stop you again. In fact, I'm not only protecting it, I'm expanding it.
To illegal aliens.
Tax credits of $800 per person per year reduce health care costs for millions of working families. That tax credit expires next year. I want to make that savings permanent. To state the obvious, women are more than half our population, but research on women's health has always been underfunded. That's why we're launching the first ever White House initiative on women's health research, led by Jill, doing an incredible job as First Lady.
Thanks. Yeah.
I feel bad. The comments are covering Josh's face.
Is that right? He's up there. I don't know.
Pass my plan for $12 billion to transfer women's health research and benefit millions of lives all across America.
But what is women?
I know the cost of housing is so important to you. If inflation keeps coming down, mortgage rates will come down as well, and the Fed acknowledges that. But I'm not waiting. I want to provide an annual tax credit that will give Americans $400 a month for the next 2 years as mortgage rates come down, to put toward their mortgages when they buy their first home or trade up for a little more space. Just for 2 years.
That includes illegal aliens. I'm just asking for a friend. I'm just asking for a friend.
And my administration is also eliminating title insurance on federally backed mortgages. When you refinance your home, you can save $1,000 or more as a consequence. For millions of renters, we're cracking down on big landlords who use antitrust law, who break antitrust laws by price fixing and driving up rents. We've cut red tape so builders can get federally financing, which is already helping build a record 1.7 million new housing units nationwide. Now pass and build and renovate 2 million affordable homes and bring those rents down.
Affordable homes for who? I'm just asking who.
To remain the strongest economy in the world, we need to have the best education system in the world.
No money for that.
And I suspect all of you, want to give every child, a good start by providing access to preschool for 3 and 4 years old. You know, I think I pointed out last year, that children coming from broken homes where there's no books, they're not read to, not spoken to very often, start school, kindergarten, or first grade, having heard 1 million fewer words spoken. Well, studies show that children who go to preschool are nearly 50% more likely to finish high school, go on to earn a 2- and 4-year degree, no matter what their background is.
No matter what their background, which would include illegal aliens.
I met a year and a half ago with the leaders of the Business Roundtable. They were mad that they were angry, I think, well, they were discussing why I wanted to spend money on education. I pointed out to them as vice president, I met with over I think it was 182 of those folks. Don't hold me to the exact number.
Sure.
And I asked them what they need most, the CEOs. And you've had the same experience on both sides of the aisle. They say a better educated workforce, right? So I looked at them.
Preschool.
I say, I come from Delaware. DuPont used to be the 8th largest corporation in the world. And every new enterprise they bought, they educated the workforce to that enterprise. But none of you do that anymore. Why are you angry with me providing you the opportunity for the best educated workforce in the world? And they all looked at me and said, I think you're right. I want to expand high-quality tutoring and summer learning to see that every child learns to read by 3rd grade.
Yeah, read it for our kids all the time. Indoctrination Nation.
My kid's in kindergarten, and he can read 100 words.
I'm also connecting local businesses and high schools so students get hands-on experience and a path to good-paying job, whether or not they go to college. And I want to make sure the college is more affordable. Let's continue increasing the Pell Grants to working and middle-class families and increase record investments in HBCUs and minority-serving institutions, including Hispanic institutions.
Oh. Already pandering to the old people. Good.
When I was told I couldn't universally just change the way in which we dealt with student loans, I fixed 2 student loan programs that already existed to reduce the burden of student debt for nearly 4 million Americans, including nurses, firefighters, and others in public service. Like Keenan Jones, a public educator from Minnesota, who's here with us tonight. Keenan, where are you? Keenan, thank you. He's educated hundreds of students so they can go to college. Now he's able to help, after debt forgiveness, get his own daughter to college. And folks, look, such relief is good for the economy because folks are now able to buy a home, start a business, start a family. While we're at it, I want the public school teachers a raise.
Wow. There's a whole lot.
I'm not against that, but where's the money going to come from? And who's going to pay for it?
They vote left.
And by the way, the first couple of years, we cut the deficit. Now, let me speak to the question of fundamental fairness for all Americans. I've been delivering real results in fiscally responsible ways. We've already cut the federal deficit. We've already cut the federal deficit over $1 trillion. I signed the bipartisan deal to cut another $1 trillion in the next decade. It's my goal to cut the federal deficit another $3 trillion by making big corporations and the very wealthy finally beginning to pay their fair share.
Old talking point. Just focus.
Write it down. Write it in your notes.
Look,
Write it in your notes for the fact check.
I'm a capitalist. If you want to make or can make $1 million or millions of bucks, that's great. Just pay your fair share in taxes. A fair tax code is how we invest things to make this country great. Healthcare, education, defense, and so much more. But here's the deal. The last administration enacted a $2 trillion tax cut, overwhelmingly benefit the top 1%, the very wealthy and the biggest corporations, and exploded the federal deficit. They added more to the national debt than any presidential term in American history. Check the numbers.
That was
Folks
COVID.
at home,
COVID did
does
that.
anybody really think the tax code is fair? Do you really think the wealthy and big corporations need another $2 trillion tax break?
Yes.
I sure don't.
It's a campaign
I'm going to
speech.
keep fighting like hell to make it fair. Under my plan, nobody earning less than $400,000 a year will pay an additional penny in federal taxes. Nobody, not one penny. And they haven't yet. In fact, the child tax credit I passed during the pandemic cut taxes for millions of working families and cut child poverty in half. Restore that child tax credit. No child should go hungry in this country. The way to make the tax code fair is to make big corporations and the very wealthy begin to pay their fair share.
She said that.
Remember in 2020, 55 of the biggest companies in America made $40 billion and paid zero in federal income tax. Zero. Not anymore. Thanks to the law I wrote and we signed, big companies have to pay a minimum of 15%. But that's still less than working people paying federal taxes. It's time to raise corporate minimum tax to at least 21%.
Terrible idea.
So every big corporation finally begins to pay their fair share.
Said it 3
I
times.
also want to end tax breaks for big pharma, big oil, private jets, massive executive pay when it's only supposed to be $1 million that could be deducted. They can pay them $20 million if they want, but deduct $1 million. End it now. You know, there are 1,000 billionaires in America. You know what the average federal tax is for those billionaires? No. They're making great sacrifices, 8.2%. That's far less than the vast majority of Americans pay. No billionaire should pay a lower federal tax rate than a teacher, a sanitation worker, or a nurse.
Class warfare.
I propose a minimum tax for billionaires at 25%, just 25%. You know what that would raise? That would raise $500 billion over the next 10 years. And imagine what that could do for America.
They just won't.
Imagine a future with affordable child care. Millions of families can get they need to go to work to help grow the economy. Imagine a future with paid leave, because no one should have to choose between working and taking care of their sick family member. Imagine the future of home care and elder care, and people living with disabilities so they can stay in their homes and family caregivers can finally get the pay they deserve. Tonight, let's all agree once again to stand up for seniors. Many of my friends on the other side of the aisle want to put Social Security on the chopping block. If anyone here tries to cut Social Security, Medicare,
true.
or raise the retirement age,
You have to
I
do
will
something.
stop you.
It won't exist. It won't exist for us.
The working people who built this country pay more into Social Security than millionaires and billionaires do. It's not fair. We have 2 ways to go. Republicans can cut Social Security and give more tax breaks to the wealthy. That's the proposal. Oh no. You guys don't want another $2 trillion tax cut? I kind of thought that's what your plan was.
He's talking
Well, that's good to hear.
down to his
You're not
colleagues.
going to cut another $2 trillion for the super wealth. That's good to hear. I'll protect and strengthen Social Security and make the wealthy pay their fair share. Look,
He's coming across really poorly. He really looks like an asshole in this.
raise prices to pad their profits, charging more and more for less and less. That's
Sound
why
like
we're
a communist?
cracking down on corporations that engage in price gouging and deceptive pricing, from food to healthcare to housing. In fact, the snack companies think you won't notice if they change the size of the bag and put a hell of a lot fewer, same size bag, put fewer chips in it. No, I'm not joking. It's called shrinkflation. Pass Bobby Casey's bill and stop this. I really mean
Just
it.
gonna raise the prices.
Yeah. We'll still be the one pick.
This is crazy.
You probably all saw that commercial on Snickers bars. You get charged the same amount, and you got about, I don't know, 10% fewer Snickers in it. Look, I'm also getting rid of junk fees. Those hidden fees at the end of your bill that are there without your knowledge. My administration announced we're cutting credit card late fees from $32 to $8. Banks and credit card companies are allowed to charge what it costs them to instigate the collection. And that's more a hell of a lot like $8.30.
Drugs are wearing off.
They don't like it. Credit card companies don't like it. But I'm saving American families $20 billion a year with all the junk fees I'm eliminating. Folks at home, that's why the banks are so mad. It's $20 billion in profit. I'm not stopping there. My administration has proposed rules to make cable, travel, utilities, and online ticket sellers tell you the total price up front so there are no surprises. It matters.
This does not help the State of the Union or describe
So
it.
does this.
The fees are annoying, but we have real
In
problems.
November,
Come on.
My team began
Right,
serious
not this.
negotiation with a bipartisan group of senators. The result was a bipartisan bill with the toughest set of border security reforms we've ever seen. Oh, you don't think so? Oh, you don't like that bill, huh? That conservatives got together and said it was a good bill? I'll be darned. That's amazing. That bipartisan bill would hire 1,500 more security agents and officers, 100 more immigration judges to help tackle the backload of 2 million cases, 4,300 more asylum officers, and new policies so they can resolve cases in 6 months instead of 6 years now.
We're not going to have time for this fact check to completely fact check. We're going to have to speed fact check.
What are you against? 100 more high-tech drug detection machines to significantly increase the ability to screen and stop vehicles smuggling fentanyl into America. That's killing thousands of children. This bill would save lives and bring order to the border.
Secure the border, that will do it.
New president, new emergency authority to temporarily shut down the border when the number of migrants at the border is overwhelming. The Border Patrol Union has endorsed this bill. The Federal Chamber of Commerce is, yeah.
They rejected
You're saying
it.
no, look at the facts. I know.
Just a
I
lie.
know you know how
Just
to read.
lies.
I believe that given the opportunity for a majority in the House and Senate would endorse the bill as well, a majority right now. But unfortunately, politics has derailed this bill so far. I'm told my predecessor called members of Congress in the Senate to demand they block the bill. He feels political win, he viewed it as a political win for me and a political loser for him. It's not about him, it's not about me. I'd be a winner, not really.
There we go. There we go.
Oh no, he's retarded.
Lincoln Riley,
Oh,
an
no.
innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand. But look, if we change the dynamic at the border, people pay these smugglers $8,000 to get across the border because they know if they get by and let into the country, it's 6 to 8 years before they have a hearing. And it's worth taking the chance of the $8,000. But if it's only 6 weeks, the idea is it's highly unlikely that people will pay that money and come all that way knowing that they'll be able to be kicked out quickly. Folks,
Oh,
He called
I
the
would
killer an
respectfully
illegal.
to suggest
Yeah.
my Republican friends owe it to the American people, get this bill done. We need to act now.
I can't believe they let him go off script.
The comments are coming in so fast.
Yeah.
And if my predecessor is watching, instead of paying politics and pressuring members of Congress to block the bill, join me in telling the Congress to pass it. We can do it together. But that's what here's what he will not do. I will not demonize immigrants saying they are poison in the blood of our country. I will
Oh.
not.
They're more important
He
than the
didn't say.
rest.
He didn't
There
say
you
that
have
for
it.
all immigrants. He didn't say that for all immigrants. This is
I will
bullshit.
not ban people because of their faith.
Trump never said he would do
Unlike my
that.
predecessor, on my first day in office, I introduced a comprehensive bill to fix our immigration system. Take a look at it. It has all these and more. Secure the border. Provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers. And so much more.
And
Well,
more.
like
There it
my
was. He
predecessor.
wants them.
I know who we are as Americans. We're the only nation in the world with a heart and soul that draws from old and new. Home to Native Americans, whose ancestors have been here for thousands of years. Home to people of from every place on earth. They came freely. Some came in chains. Some came when famine struck, like my ancestral family in Ireland. Some to flee persecution, to chase dreams that are impossible anywhere but here in America. That's America. And we all come from somewhere, but we're all American.
That cough is getting worse.
The meds are failing. I guessed 30 to 40 minutes. That's where we are.
Folks,
You can tell.
we have
Yeah.
a simple choice. We can fight about fixing the border, or we can fix it.
You.
I'm ready to fix it.
You broke it.
Send me the border bill now.
You broke it.
A transformational moment in history happened 59 years ago today in Selma, Alabama.
Oh,
Hundreds of foot soldiers for justice marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, named after the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan, to claim their fundamental right to vote. They were beaten, they were bloody, and left for dead. Our late friend and former colleague, John Lewis, was on that march. We miss him. But joining us tonight are other marchers, both in the gallery and on the floor, including Betty Mae Fikes, known as the voice of Selma. The daughter of gospel singers and preachers, she sang songs of prayer and protest on that bloody Sunday to help shake the nation's conscience. 5 months later, the Voting Rights Act passed and was signed into law. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But
That woman's hair.
59 years later, there are forces taking us back in time. Voter suppression, election subversion, unlimited dark money, extreme gerrymandering.
bullshit.
John Lewis is a great friend to many of us here. But if you truly want to honor him and all the heroes who marched with him, then it's time to do more than talk. Pass the Freedom to Vote Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And stop denying another core value of America, our diversity across American life. Banning books, it's wrong. Instead of erasing history, let's make history.
No books, just banning
I want to
porn.
protect fundamental rights. Pass the Equality Act. And my message to transgender Americans, I have your back. Pass the PRO Act for workers' rights. Raise the federal minimum wage, because every worker has a right to a
Federal.
decent living more than $7 an hour. We're also making history by confronting the climate crisis, not denying it. I don't think any of you think there's no longer a climate crisis. At least I hope you don't. I'm taking the most significant action ever on climate in the history of the world.
In the history of the universe.
In half by 2030, creating tens of thousands of clean energy jobs, like the IBEW work is building and installing 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations. conserving 30% of America's lands and waters by 2030, and taking action on environmental justice fence line communities smothered by the legacy of pollution.
Environmental justice.
Pattern after the Peace Corps and AmeriCorps, I launched the Climate Corps to put 20,000 young people to work in the forefront of our clean energy future. I'll triple that number in a decade.
Look how happy she is. I love AFP.
To state the obvious, all Americans deserve the freedom to be safe. And America is safer today than when I took
Going after
office.
guns. Here we go.
Year before I took office, murder rates went up 30%. 30% they went up. The biggest increase in history. It was then, through my American Rescue Plan, which every American voted against, I might add, we made the largest investment in public safety ever.
Every
Last
American
year, the
voted
murder rate
against?
saw the sharpest decrease in history. Violent crime fell to one of its lowest levels in more than 50 years. But we have more to do. We have to help cities invest in more community police officers, more mental health workers, more community violence intervention. Give communities the tool to crack down on gun crime, retail crime, and carjacking. Keep public trust as I've been doing by taking executive action on police reform, calling for it to be the law of the land, directing my cabinet to review the federal classification of marijuana and expunging thousands of convictions for the mere possession, because no one should be jailed for simply using or have it on their record.
Wow.
Take on crimes of domestic violence. I'm ramping up the federal enforcement of the Violence Against Women Act that I proudly wrote when I was a senator, so we can finally end the scourge against women in America.
There's no scourge against women. Come on.
Yeah, what's going on? Trying to dominate
What are the
everything.
kinds of violence I want to stop? With us tonight is Jasmine, whose 9-year-old sister Jackie was murdered with 21 classmates and teachers in an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. Very soon after that happened, Jill and I went to Uvalde for a couple of days. We spent hours and hours with each of the families. We heard their message, so everyone in this room, in this chamber, could hear the same message. The constant refrain, and I was there for hours meeting with every family. They said, do something. Do something. Well, I did do something by establishing the first ever Office of Gun Violence Prevention in the White House that the Vice President is leading.
Here we go.
Thank you for doing it. Meanwhile, my predecessor told the NRA he's proud he did nothing on guns when he was president.
Mike Johnson rolled his
After
eyes.
another shooting in Iowa recently, he said, when asked what to do about it, he said, just get over it.
That is a fucking
There's his
lie.
quote, just get
That's
over
not the context, you piece
it.
of
I say,
shit.
stop it. Stop it, stop it, stop it.
That's not the context,
I'm
you
proud
piece
to
of
beat the
shit.
NRA when I signed the most significant gun safety law in nearly 30 years because of this Congress. We now must beat the NRA again. I'm demanding a ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. Pass universal background checks. None of this. None
Not
of
gonna
this.
happen.
I taught the Second Amendment for 12 years.
He never
None of
taught
this
a class.
violates The Second Amendment.
Fact check, he never taught a class.
Vilifies responsible gun owners. You know, as we manage challenges at home, we're also managing crises abroad, including in the Middle East.
I love the
I know
manic
last 5 months
segues.
have been gut-wrenching for so many
It's-
people, for the Israeli
Crazy.
people, for the Palestinian people, and so many here in America. This crisis began on October 7th with a massacre by a terrorist group called Hamas, as you all know. 1,200 innocent people, women and girls, men and boys, slaughtered after enduring sexual violence. the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and 250 hostages taken. Here in this chamber tonight are families whose loved ones are still being held by Hamas. I pledge to all the families that we will not rest until we bring every one of your loved ones home.
He just called for a
We
ceasefire
also,
this week. Kamala Harris called for a ceasefire this week. What is he talking about?
we will also work around the clock to bring home Evan and Paul, Americans being unjustly detained by the Russians and others around the world. Israel has the right to go after Hamas. Hamas ended this conflict by releasing hostages, laying down arms, could end it by releasing the hostages, laying down arms, and surrendering those responsible for October 7th. But Israel has Israel has a added burden because Hamas hides and operates among the civilian population like cowards, under hospitals, daycare centers, and all the like. Israel also has a fundamental responsibility, though, to protect innocent civilians in Gaza. This war has taken a greater toll on innocent civilians than all previous wars in Gaza combined. More than 30,000 Palestinians have been killed, most of whom are not Hamas. Thousands and thousands of innocents, women and children, girls and boys, also orphaned. Nearly 2 million more Palestinians under bombardment or displacement. Homes destroyed, neighborhoods in rubble, cities in ruin, families without food, water, medicine. It's heartbreaking. I've been working nonstop to establish an immediate ceasefire that would last for 6 weeks to get all the prisoners released, all the hostages released, to get the hostages home and ease the intolerable and humanitarian crisis and build toward an enduring, something more enduring. The United States has been leading international efforts to get more humanitarian assistance to Gaza. Tonight, I'm directing the U.S. military to lead an emergency mission to establish a temporary pier in the Mediterranean on the coast of Gaza that can receive large shipments carrying
Building
food,
them
water, medicine,
a
and
harbor.
temporary shelters.
Yeah.
No U.S. boots will be on the ground.
Okay. Gonna pause it real quick. The reason that Palestine doesn't have a harbor is because when they had a harbor, they used it to bring in weapons. Every restriction in place to stop things coming in or out of Palestine has been put in place because they were smuggling weapons. I guarantee you, if Joe Biden gives them a harbor, they will use it to import weapons.
A temporary pier will enable a massive increase in the amount of humanitarian assistance getting into Gaza every day.
It's like a foothold in the water.
And Israel must do its part. Israel must allow more aid into Gaza to ensure humanitarian workers aren't caught in the crossfire. And they're announcing they're going to have a crossing in northern Gaza. To the leadership of Israel, I say this: humanitarian assistance cannot be a secondary consideration or a bargaining chip. Protecting and saving innocent lives has to be a priority. As we look to the future, the only real solution to the situation is a two-state solution over time.
No!
Like that.
Oh my God.
Sure, Israel was that, dude.
And I say this:
They just invaded Israel and killed all those
as a
people. Oh, let's give them
lifelong
more
supporter of
sovereignty.
Israel, my entire career, no one has a stronger record with Israel than I do. I challenge any of you here. I'm the only
Trump.
American president of Israel in wartime. But there is no other path that guarantees Israel's security and democracy. There is no other path that guarantees Palestinians can live in peace with peace and dignity. And there's no other path that guarantees peace between Israel and all of its neighbors, including Saudi Arabia, with whom I'm talking. Creating stability in the Middle East also means containing the threat posed by Iran. That's why I built a coalition of more than a dozen countries to to defend international shipping and freedom of navigation in the Red Sea. I've ordered strikes to degrade the Houthi capability and defend U.S. forces in the region. As Commander-in-Chief, I will not hesitate to direct further measures to protect our people and our military personnel.
The meaner's changing.
For years,
Right.
I've heard many of my Republican and Democratic friends say that China is on the rise and America is falling behind. They've got it backwards. I've been saying it for over 4 years, even when I wasn't president. America's rising. We have the best economy in the world. And since I've come to office, our GDP is up, our trade deficit with China is down to the lowest point in over a decade. And we're standing up against China's unfair economic practices. We're standing up for peace and stability across the Taiwan Straits. I've revitalized our partnership and alliance in the Pacific. India, Australia, Japan, South Korea, Pacific Islands. I've made sure that the most advanced American technologies can't be used in China, not allowing to trade them there. Frankly, for all this tough talk on China, it never occurred to my predecessor to do any of that. I want competition with China, not conflict. And we're in a stronger position to win the conflict of the 21st century against China than anyone else, for that matter, than any time as well. Here at home, I've signed over 400 bipartisan bills, but there's more to pass my unity agenda. Strengthen penalties on fentanyl trafficking. You don't want to do that, huh?
This is unity. This is what unity looks like.
To protect our children online. Harness the promise of AI to protect us from peril.
Oh my God.
Ban AI voice impersonations and more.
Pandering
Keep our
to
truly sacred obligation to train and equip those we send into harm's way and care for them and their families when they come home and when they don't. That's why the song Support and Help of Dennis and the VA, I signed the PACT Act. One of the most significant laws ever, helping millions of veterans exposed to toxins who now are battling more than 100 different cancers. Many of them don't come home, but we owe them and their families support. We owe it to ourselves to keep supporting our new health research agency called ARPA-H, and remind us that we can do big things, like end cancer as we know it, and we will.
Didn't he already stay in cancer?
Let me close with this. Yay.
Yeah, that finally gets last time.
Republican claps.
I know you don't want to hear any more, Lindsey, but I got to say a few more things. I know it may not look like it, but I've been around a while. When you get to be my age, certain things become clearer than ever. I know the American story. Again and again, I've seen the contest between competing forces in the battle for the soul of our nation, between those who want to pull America back to the past and those who want to move America into the future. My lifetime has taught me to embrace freedom and democracy, a future based on core values that have defined America: honesty, decency, dignity, equality, to respect everyone, to give everyone a fair shot, to give hate no safe harbor. Now, other people my age see it differently. The American story of resentment, revenge, and retribution, that's not me. I was born amid World War II, when America stood for the freedom of the world. I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claymont, Delaware, among working-class people who built this country. I watched in horror as two of my heroes, like many of you did, Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy, were assassinated. And their legacies inspired me to pursue a career in service. I left the law firm, became a public defender because my city of Wilmington was the only city in America occupied by the National Guard after Dr. King was assassinated because of the riots. And I became a county councilman almost by accident. I got elected to the United States Senate when I had no intention of running at age 29.
Stop speech.
Then vice president to our first black president. Now president to the first women vice president. In my career, I've been told I was too young. By the way, they didn't let me on the Senate elevators for votes sometimes. Not a joke.
That one's probably
I've
real.
been told I'm too old. Whether young or old, I've always known what endures. I've known our North Star. The very idea of America is that we're all created equal and deserve to be treated equally throughout our lives. We've never fully lived up to that idea, but we've never walked away from it either. And I won't walk away from it now. I'm optimistic. I really am. I'm optimistic, Nancy.
Vance?
My fellow Americans, the issue facing our nation isn't how old we are, it's how old are our ideas. Hate, anger, revenge, retribution are the oldest of ideas. But you can't lead America with ancient ideas that only take us back.
Retribution,
You
like
need
what the
America
DOJ is
the land
doing.
of possibilities. You need a vision for the future and what can and should be done. Tonight you've heard mine. I see a future where defending democracy, you don't diminish it. I see a future where we restore the right to choose and protect our freedoms, not take them away. I see a future where the middle class finally has a fair shot and the wealthy have to pay their fair share in taxes.
That is the fifth time
I
you
see
said
a
that.
future where we save the planet from the climate crisis and our country from gun violence. Above all, I see a future for all Americans. I see a country for all Americans. And I will always be president for all Americans because I believe in America. I believe in you, the American people. You're the reason we've never been more optimistic about our future than I am now. So let's build the future together. Let's remember who we are. We are the United States of America. And there is nothing beyond our capacity when we act together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Not God bless the United States of America.
No, not God bless the United. He did the spiel, but close enough.
Yeah.
So my family's just getting home, which is the worst time. I muted my. They went out of the house for this, so they weren't going to bang on the door. So let's get through these fact checks. Lots to fact check. Probably have to do a video fact checking, but I want to. Did you take notes throughout?
Yeah, I've
still
got a
jotting
bunch
things down?
from where I jumped in. Like COVID, the worst economy stuff. A heckler comes through on COVID. The greatest story never told. Like as I recall, it was a whole bunch of Democrat ideas and thinkers who wanted to shut down economy, shut down businesses.
Yeah.
You know, prevent people from going home. They ruined a generation of students in school.
Yeah.
Because they haven't had the interaction, and yet he somehow was like he oversaw it fixing it. Like I couldn't understand the point he was trying to make there. So,
well, they love to try and take a hands-off approach to the fact that it was Democrat policymakers, Democrat politicians who led the way and advanced the way on lockdowns and things like that.
Yeah.
So they always like to hide that. And listen, Republican governors did it too. But the decisions at the policy level were being made by liberals in government. which is why it's so ridiculous when they blame Trump for every single penny of spending, COVID-related spending, of, oh, that's what Trump added to the deficit. It's horseshit. And the good news is that it does look like CNN called him out on that, saying that you can't blame Trump for every cent of COVID spending.
Right.
Thing I thought really interesting, his meds are wearing off very obviously. And when he got in that little tussle with Marjorie Taylor Greene over immigration, he actually said, what was it, thousands of Americans killed by illegals?
Yes.
He said the quiet part out loud. That's, in Democrat circles, that's the most quiet of the quiet parts.
Yeah.
Thousands of Americans are being killed by illegals. He said that. That wasn't Marjorie Taylor Greene. That was Joe Biden from the lectern saying thousands of Americans are being killed by illegals. So not only did he use the language that's dehumanizing, that his administration as a point of policy has says, we don't call them illegals. He admitted that thousands of Americans are being killed by the people he's deliberately letting into this country.
Yes.
That was a stunning moment. And I don't think that happens in the beginning of the speech when he's fully medicated. That happened right as that 30, 40-minute mark, as those meds, as I predicted, as other people predicted, start wearing off. On my bingo card, I did not predict that under-medicated Joe Biden would admit from the lectern that thousands of Americans are being killed by illegals.
Yes.
That was not on my bingo board.
He went exactly an hour-ish, right? He came out 1 minute late, right, on Biden time. He goes the 1 hour. So he couldn't, did he even go that hour 10 that the over-under was? I mean, of course they want to keep him under that time because they know the meds aren't going to work. The other part that grabbed me was the inflation talk. Like the amount of inflation that has started under his 4 years, because he's not actually his president, he's ruling, has been tremendous. And there's not been a reduction in inflation. There's just been a slowdown in the rise of inflation.
Yeah.
And they're somehow touting that inflation is down. No, eggs are still 20% more. I stopped by an Arby's, Max, an Arby's. I wanted 2 beef and cheddars. They wanted something like $15. That's inflation.
Yeah.
It's inflation. And I have not been to an Arby's in forever. And it blew my mind what it costs to eat at an Arby's.
Yeah.
It was not that before. That never existed under Trump. That never existed under a low tax.
I'm on limited time because my dogs are going crazy because my family is waiting outside the house because the kids are going to come upstairs like a little marching band and bang all the pots and pans. He mentioned IVF, in vitro fertilization, and that it is heinous to oppose it. I want to explain why pro-lifers often oppose IVF, so you can understand what's actually happening in that process and why someone who's pro-life, who believes that life begins at conception, when an egg is fertilized, it becomes an embryo. When you go through IVF, it's a numbers game. They don't fertilize one egg and implant one egg. They fertilize as many eggs as they can. And then they select which ones are good enough for attempted implantation. So throughout this entire process, they are looking at eggs and fertilized embryos, fertilized eggs, and deciding which ones deserve a chance at life. And at the end, they will put as many eggs as they can in a woman's uterus, hoping that one of them sticks. But on the off chance that 2 or 3 of them successfully implant, there is a process that is very common in IVF known as selective reduction. That is the idea that a woman only wanted one child. So if IVF successfully created triplets, they will go in and they will abort 2 of the babies so that she only gives birth to 1. That is a very common practice within IVF. So during the actual in vitro fertilization process, there is a literal, as a point of policy, they are killing babies that are determined to be unworthy of implantation. But even if they are successfully implanted, as a point of policy, it is incredibly common for abortions to be used to selectively reduce the number of babies that a woman gives birth to, because they only wanted one baby. They didn't want 4. And why do they have 4? Because it's a numbers game. They have to implant 4 embryos, hoping that one of them will successfully implant and grow through pregnancy. That is what conservatives who are pro-life take offense to. In a world where you only harvest 1 egg, you fertilize 1 egg, and you implant 1 egg, and you are left with, well, you either implants or it doesn't. That is a very different ethical calculus, right? But in a system where you literally harvest, let's say, a dozen eggs, maybe 8 of them are mature, right? So you try to fertilize 8, and you say, oh, well, 4 of them really deserve to be implanted. You implant all 4, and then you selectively reduce the 3, right? You have created 8 human lives. And as a matter of the process, you have killed 7 of them, right? So for every child that is born through IVF, it's a miracle of science, absolutely. But for every 1 child born, there are many more children, and I'm talking about fertilized embryos, human beings, that are deliberately killed through this process or discarded, right? And that's heinous. So in a world where we only fertilize 1 embryo and implant 1 embryo, that's something that we can talk about, right? But the problem is IVF as a whole is designed to quite literally discard the life that is deemed to be unworthy of continuing on in the pregnancy, which is wrong.
How did you feel when he referred to the fetus that was in that lady instead of the baby? Because that was very
that was a choice.
Language. Very
that was a choice,
language. Right? They're still taking that position, right? It's not a baby; it's just a fetus. Do you feel like there was a lot of? I felt like there was a lot of class. Like let's not call it class warfare, but there's certainly some socioeconomic warfare. Like the rich paying their fair share still. Like a bunch of broken ropes still coming out of their side. Just still hitting, and they're going with it, right? That must be scoring well with their pollers. So that's why I guess they're still saying it, or they're just sticking to their guns on it. But that one's going to get sticky down.
Yeah.
Down the road.
It's free game. And listen, that is an issue that I talk about in my book. I don't want to keep peddling the books, but I wrote this book. It's very big for a reason, because these are complicated issues. And like IVF, when you look at it, you're like, oh, miracle of life. These are people that can't get pregnant, who science is helping them get pregnant. Yes, but the process of that absolutely involves discarding human life deemed to be unworthy of being allowed to continue in its development. Right? So there's huge issues, and they're counting on the American people not understanding that. Very few people actually have gone through this process and are knowledgeable enough about this process to understand what happens. And if you look at this, isn't just true for IVF, it's true for across the board with the Democrat policies. They're quite literally counting on ignorance. They're reliant on ignorance to advance themselves further. Right? And you had a little bit, as I said earlier, the quiet part out loud. Joe Biden saying that in a speech where he's supposed to be touting his administration's immigration successes, he admitted that thousands of Americans are being killed by illegals. Stunning stuff. What else did you have on there? I had that the 15 million new jobs that he touted was bullshit, because that was people who were laid off or fired from their work as a result of lockdowns and then rehired. Those weren't largely new jobs. Those were old jobs coming back. And that was bullshit. You talked about inflation. Inflation's high. It's still going up.
Yeah, and those jobs were also government jobs, right? So a lot of those weren't even what we call rich jobs, meaning that they don't actually supply towards the GDP, right? It's just government-based jobs. I mean, just when he forgot Riley's name on the button with MTG, like it doesn't take much to get him flustered, right?
I was surprised. I don't think he intended to use the button, but when he saw she was like jeering at him, he pulled the button out. And he didn't know the name well enough to really talk about it.
Bad luck. Bad luck. Bad
wasn't a good look.
All around.
Wasn't even
never
looking.
should have taken that button in the first place.
No, never,
Like, well,
never, 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 never.
no.
If you're a
There was
Democrat.
a heckler in the upper stands. Somebody was calling him out, and it really did screw with him.
And I don't know
Right.
what that was all about. He was talking about crime rates, and someone seemed to have been heckling him about the Marine Corps. I don't know what that was all about.
Yeah.
We'll have to wait and watch the replay.
Replay, yeah.
Don't know what that was all about. He said at one point that we are experiencing a soft landing, that
Oh,
the
yeah,
recovery
just-
is a soft landing. And I saw
Of course.
reports just out this week that that layoffs are at the highest point they've been since 2009. And so he's calling this an economic soft landing when the data is showing the exact opposite. He was definitely cherry picking the data throughout this thing. Talking about electric cars, we don't have the energy production to facilitate electric cars. He wants everyone to go to electric cars by like 2030, 2035. We don't have the grid. It just doesn't exist, especially when you're talking about like commercial vehicles that have to haul a lot, that are heavy. There have been anecdotal stories of companies who are trying to go to an all electric fleet of like trucks and like forklifts and things like that. And they went to their power company, and the power company said, "Ha ha ha, we cannot literally get you the amperage you would need to charge all those vehicles at once. It'd be trickle charging, and
Yeah.
it would take a day to charge what you'd use in 5 hours." Right? So like it'd be 5 hours on, 24 hours off. The grid is just not designed for it. It isn't.
No,
It isn't at all.
it's not ready there. A lot of the
Prescription
border
prices.
talk, the voter
Did you-
suppression stuff that came up.
Did you have
I mean,
anything
there
on
was a lot
prescription
of-
prices?
Say that again.
Did you have anything on prescription prices? Because I don't know about you, but nowadays I don't use my insurance on prescriptions. Like
Yeah.
I have a deductible, so everyone has a deductible. But I look at it and say, like, I'm not sick. I don't anticipate meeting the deductible. So I would much rather save $20 here, $30 here on the insurance than rely on that being applied towards my deductible, right? If I reach my deductible at the end of the year, something's gone catastrophically wrong, and $10 here, $10 there doesn't mean anything. But when I go get my insurance, my meds now, I just use GoodRx, and it's half the price as my insurance.
And everybody else is too. But he was also counting the insulin stuff on that, and it was a Trump thing that they got rid of. And as soon as it was gotten rid of, he came out with his own insulin thing. Remember? And like that's what he's touting, undoing someone else's work and starting all over. I mean, it's empty. I mean,
He talked about home prices.
yeah,
think it's-
like
it's
that's the next one I
interesting.
wanted to hit because who's going to get all these cheap housing, right? Who's it going to go to? I mean, we've got a flood of millions of illegals in, and suddenly now we're going to
Yep.
tout building all these affordable houses. I mean, if
Supply
you can't see
down,
the writing on the wall now,
demand up.
yeah,
The price of the raw materials is up. Remember how wood spiked during the pandemic? It's come down since then, but raw materials are still up. Metals, copper is up. Wiring is more expensive now.
gosh, yeah,
Everything's more expensive. Labor is more expensive. And that is partially his doing. He's saying, oh, we want to raise the minimum wage, raise the minimum wage. Well, listen, people working on job sites, building houses aren't making minimum wage, but he has been pressuring and trying to raise wages. And he always has these creepy speeches where he's like, pay the workers more. And he whispers in the microphone.
yeah.
That has consequences across the economy, right? So even if he isn't putting pressure on the builders to pay their laborers more, when he says, "Oh, grocery stores, pay your clerks more," what does that do? That raises the price of groceries. Fast food, pay your workers more. That
Yeah.
raises the price of fast food. So then the workers on the job site say, "Hey, well, wait a minute, I can't work for $10 an hour. I can't make that much. The food's more expensive. Everything's more expensive. I won't work for anything less than 16 an hour."
Yeah.
Right? So then the job sites have to raise their wages to account for the fact that everything else in the economy is more expensive. Everything in the economy is more expensive. My kids have reached the door.
I could hear something. It's kind of cute.
He's saying,
The
Daddy,
fair
open the
tax
door
code
now.
stuff, I mean, they're going after billionaires. I mean, the ones that are already sheltering the burden of a lot of taxes, right? Those billionaires are just going to leave. Like he said something like a 21% tax on just being a billionaire. Who would ever be a billionaire in the United States? A higher corporate tax? Corporate taxes drive businesses away completely. There's never going to be a new corporate business in the United States if that rate goes up. You're muted. Can't hear you.
Hold on one second. I'm gonna
But-
bring Michael in here so that he isn't banging. 1 second.
So that corporate rate, I mean, nobody's going to run a business in the United States if the taxes will just sit there and destroy them. They're going to take those businesses overseas. They're going to go somewhere else. They're going to go to a place that has a cheap labor pool, right? That is what they will do because they have billions of dollars to do it. They have the means by which to do it. So that was just, I mean, it was just total garbage listening to that. Part of me got really mad listening to the lies, you know? And now I really have to watch my language because the young guys here. And when he unmutes
He
that,
can't hear you.
okay, good, that's half.
So this is the
But I was just talking
youngest.
about that high corporate rate.
I want the door.
No, you can't. You're in here with me now.
I want the door.
He's on the air, so he's
So
gonna
Michael,
get like a
Michael, what do you think of
snack
this? What do you think of Biden?
What's this?
Is Biden bad?
What's this?
It's a microphone.
What is a beer?
It's
Well,
a
let's take
computer, yeah.
let's take a turn.
What's this?
It's a screen. It's called a pop filter.
What's a pasta?
It's
What
not
is-
pasta.
You know
Okay.
what's crazy?
Yeah.
Is that Michael makes more sense in these last 30 seconds than Biden did
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
on
yeah.
that whole
What's
stage.
this? What's this?
You know what I'm
It's
saying?
yeah.
'Cause-
Okay, let's bang through some of these. Shrinkflation bill will just raise prices. Complaining about how many chips are in a bag is kind of rings hollow to people.
What is
who
that?
Like
is
that
the-
was wild.
yeah. That's just
That-
lazy writing.
Yeah,
You know?
that was very wild, and it also shows a real disconnect in what the real problems are.
Right.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
agree?
yeah.
Yeah.
Was
yeah.
Biden bad?
It's what is
Say Biden bad.
the bad boy.
Yeah.
Bad.
You're leading your
Very good.
witness here. You're leading your witness. So hold on.
The police are.
The climate crisis kept showing up.
Yeah,
Right.
it's army.
Yeah. The what is it now? What's this? What's these?
It's the Springs. So the one that really got me fired up was when he
Yeah.
started accusing Trump of telling victims of mass shootings to just get over it.
Oh,
That
my
was
God.
something that was completely out of context. I don't have the clip in front of me,
But
that was-
infuriating.
but we covered this on the show. We covered this on the show where he literally, it was not just
Why?
hearts and prayers. He said it's up to all of us to come together and console these people and
Yeah.
rebuild this community. And yes, we are going to need to move on and keep going. But the way Biden described that was disgusting. It was absolutely disgusting.
Yeah.
I'm a post on my socials all of the clips as I have time. I don't have a ton of time, right? No time.
Yeah.
And he
yeah,
hates the Second Amendment. He hates
He hates
the
it.
Second Amendment. He hates it. Like he hates it. And seeing Mayorkas's face out there tonight, just knowing the condition the border is in, the way they're begging for powers to fix it, just
Yeah.
it was
You
disgusting.
guys in
That's as cheap as you can get.
Here. A muffle.
Hi there.
Yeah, it's Michael. It's Michael.
And mind what they do.
I know.
I'm gonna ask you this question, Max. What was mentioned in the State of the Union that told us what the current
What
State
is
of the
it
Union
now?
is? Is the State of the Union strong? Is our economy strong?
Mm.
And there was just a bunch of
It was a campaign speech. It
issues, right?
was a campaign speech.
What you teach?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you teach?
I have 2 TVs. You're right. I have 2 monitors.
And that
Michael's talking about the
was
important stuff.
campaign speech.
It's a campaign speech. I was stunned at how anti-Trump the beginning was.
Yeah.
I was stunned.
Yeah.
No, stop it. I was stunned. I'm quickly running out of time. The kids have gathered. Max,
you're-
hold on,
yeah.
Max. All right. No such thing as an assault
What
weapon.
for you?
Yeah. Trump never said that he did nothing on guns. What he
What's
said
this?
is that he stopped them from
What-
chipping
what
away at the
kind-
Second Amendment.
What's this?
Yeah.
It's a microphone.
Yeah.
What's on?
Yes.
Oh, a pair.
And also, Joe Biden said he taught a class about the Second Amendment. That's false.
Yeah.
He never taught a class. He was a professor in name only.
Ma,
Did you? He kind of he's breaking that fourth wall. He was spending too much going after his opponents, right?
Yeah.
He was really taking the low ground on debate when you start going after when you start going after your opponent on those sort of things, right? It's a weak argument and it doesn't make sense. But that's all he had left. and then Michael gets to hear me talk, the slow, raspy voice that I have. But I mean, it was just
The chaos is falling apart on my end.
it's falling
Max,
apart.
stop! It's falling
Max,
apart. It's completely falling apart. The fact that we went 2 hours and 10 minutes without the Visigoths at the gate trying to sack Rome was shocking. But I'm going to do another video on this because there's a lot we didn't get to talk about. But I think this was probably the most divisive State of the Union I've ever seen. The most campaign rhetoric-esque speech I've ever seen. The most angry speech where he's literally condescending, talking down to Republicans while simultaneously begging them to vote for his bills. It was a terrible look. It was just bad all around, and we'll have to see the polling, but I don't expect that this is going to be seen positively. This is going to be seen positively. No,
State of the
Annie, no.
Union. State of the Union bump, or does he get the
Why
State of the
do
Union slump?
Why should you do it?
Taking over the show. I don't know how
They've
you
taken
do
over.
this.
They've taken
I don't
over.
know how you do
I don't know if I can get all the kids in at once. Oh, that's Max Jr.
I can
He's in
see the
kindergarten
eyes
now.
now.
Yeah. Michael is falling.
Only what do it? What to do it now?
He's telling my wife to close the door. This is chaos.
What to
Okay.
watch it?
That's it for our stream. I have been invaded by the babies.
What
um,
to do it?
That
Hi.
that's it for the stream.
What's this book?
Those are my books, Max.
What's this book?
Kids, come on. That's it for the stream. If you like the stream, if you like this content, this is prime content.
This is the
I know.
extra.
This is I know your foot's stuck. This is prime content. This is why you come. If you like this, as the viewers drop precipitously, subscribe, follow, like, comment, share. I think that the stream went very well until my kids invaded, but it's not their fault. It's 10 p.m. our time. It's bedtime. So that's it for this edition of the podcast. My name is Max McGuire.
I'm Josh Hammerling.
And that's Max McGuire Jr. Remember, everyone, the fight to take back our country is not over yet, but the only way we win is if we all stand up and fight together. See you next time.